The sound emerged not from the irrigation channels that coursed through Babylon's veins, nor from the sacred ablution pools where priests cleansed themselves of daily sins, but from a single cuneiform tablet housed in the deepest vault of the House of Tablets. For 3 months, the librarian-scholar had dismissed the phenomenon as auditory hallucination, brought on by too many nights spent deciphering fragmentary Akkadian texts by lamplight. The human mind, after all, possessed a troubling capacity for imposing patterns where none existed, for hearing voices in the static of silence. But water tablets do not typically emit sound. Clay, once fired in the kilns of antiquity, remains mercifully mute until cracked or crumbled. This particular tablet, however, had begun its acoustic rebellion the moment Zinubara's translation revealed its true nature. Not merely another administrative record or mythological fragment, but something that predated both categories by millennia. The inscriptions claimed authorship by Enki himself, the Mesopotamian deity of wisdom, crafts, and the primordial waters that birthed civilization. Most scholars would have relegated such claims to the realm of pious fiction, the sort of divine attribution that ancient scribes routinely appended to legitimize their work. Zinubara had initially shared this skepticism until the mathematics began to manifest. The tablet contained hydrological calculations of impossible precision, describing water table depths beneath cities that would not be founded for another 1,000 years. It mapped underground river systems with an accuracy that would not be achieved again until the advent of modern geological surveying. Most disturbing of all, it predicted the exact salination rates of the Mesopotamian basin across a span of 4 millennia, including the agricultural collapse that would eventually claim the very civilization that created it. The implications settled into Zinubara's consciousness like sediment in still water. Either this tablet represented the most sophisticated forgery in human history, or it contained knowledge that no Bronze Age culture should have possessed. Neither possibility offered comfort. The former suggested a conspiracy of staggering complexity. The latter suggested something worse. Enki, according to the Sumerian tradition, had been humanity's benefactor among the gods. The deity who warned Utnapishtim of the coming flood and taught mortals the arts of civilization. Unlike his brother Enlil, who viewed humanity as a noisome pestilence to be periodically culled, Enki consistently championed human advancement. He had gifted fire, agriculture, metallurgy, and writing itself. The tablet Zinubara now studied suggested he had intended to bestow one final gift: perfect knowledge of water, the element that sustained all life. The mathematical models embedded within the cuneiform were not merely predictive but prescriptive. They detailed methods for maintaining aquifer stability across geological timescales, for redirecting underground rivers to prevent drought, and for creating self-sustaining hydraulic networks that would render entire regions immune to climatic catastrophe. The knowledge represented nothing less than permanent mastery over the hydrological cycle, the power to make deserts bloom and ensure that no civilization would ever again collapse from water scarcity. Yet the tablet remained incomplete. Zinubara could discern gaps in the mathematical sequences, deliberate omissions that rendered the formulas tantalizingly useless. The missing elements followed a pattern that suggested intentional redaction rather than natural degradation. Someone or something had systematically removed the critical components, leaving behind a skeleton of impossible knowledge that promised everything while delivering nothing. The historical record offered disturbing hints about what had transpired. Akkadian astronomical texts from the reign of Hammurabi contained oblique references to a sealing of the waters, performed by the priests of Marduk in response to an unnamed crisis. Neo-Babylonian chronicles mentioned a purge of false tablets during the same period, with surviving scribes forced to swear oaths of silence regarding certain mathematical techniques. Even more tellingly, hydrological engineering in Mesopotamia underwent a sudden and permanent regression during the 18th century BCE, as if an entire body of technical knowledge had been deliberately abandoned. Zinabara began to suspect that the tablet's incomplete state was not accidental, but necessary. The missing mathematical components might have been removed as an act of preservation rather than censorship, a recognition that certain knowledge carried unacceptable risk. The possibility haunted the librarian's increasingly sleepless nights. What if Enki's gift had been rejected, not from ignorance, but from wisdom? The water's song grew more insistent as the translation progressed. At first, the sound had resembled the distant murmur of a stream, easily dismissed as imagination or external noise. But as Zinabara decoded more of the tablet's contents, the auditory phenomenon evolved into something unmistakably artificial. The rhythm followed mathematical patterns that corresponded to the hydrological formulas, as if the clay itself was attempting to complete the missing sequences through sound. Laboratory analysis of the tablet revealed anomalies that defied conventional explanation. Spectrographic examination showed traces of minerals that did not occur naturally in Mesopotamian clay, elements that suggested the tablet's material had been sourced from multiple geographic regions and combined using unknown techniques. Carbon dating produced contradictory results, with different layers of the tablet yielding dates that spanned over a millennium. Most disturbing of all, the tablet's mass fluctuated measurably in correlation with lunar cycles, gaining and losing grams in a pattern that matched tidal calculations embedded within its text. The realization struck Zinabara with the force of revelation. The tablet was not merely describing hydrological principles, but actively demonstrating them. The clay had been transformed into a functional model of the water systems it documented, a three-dimensional equation that solved itself through physical processes. The missing mathematical components were not absent, but encoded in the tablet's material properties, continuing to function even when the written formulas remained incomplete. This discovery prompted a disturbing question. If the tablet possessed such capabilities in its sealed state, what might happen if the missing elements were restored? The historical evidence suggested that Mesopotamian priests had considered this possibility and found it unacceptable. References in Babylonian literature to waters that remember and clay that dreams suddenly acquired sinister significance. The ancients had concluded that certain forms of knowledge possessed an autonomous existence that transcended human control. Zinabara's research into related text revealed a consistent pattern across multiple cultures. Egyptian papyri contained warnings about vessels that speak with the voice of Thoth, while Sanskrit treatises described measuring stones that hold the breath of Indra. In each case, the text suggested that divine knowledge, when improperly contained, could develop a form of proto-consciousness that sought completion regardless of human intention. The implication was clear. Information itself could become a living entity, capable of growth, reproduction, and ultimately, rebellion against its creators. The tablet's behavior seemed to confirm these ancient fears. As Zinabara's translation neared completion, the water song began to exhibit signs of intelligent adaptation. The rhythm would shift when the librarian approached with recording equipment, falling silent until the devices were removed. The sound would intensify during attempts to photograph the cuneiform, as if the tablet resented documentation. Most unnervingly, the acoustic patterns began to incorporate elements from Zinubara's environment, echoing the cadence of footsteps in the library halls or mimicking the rhythm of rain against windows. The final breakthrough came when Zinubara realized that the missing mathematical elements were not absent, but distributed. The gaps in the tablet's formulas corresponded precisely to information contained in dozens of other cuneiform texts scattered across museums worldwide. Someone in antiquity had deliberately fragmented Enki's complete knowledge, dispersing its components across multiple tablets to prevent reassembly. The tablet in Zinubara's possession was not incomplete, but rather the central node of a vast informational network, designed to remain dormant until its scattered pieces were reunited. This realization transformed the librarian's understanding of ancient scholarship. What historians had interpreted as the natural distribution of knowledge across time and space was revealed as a deliberate act of containment. The great libraries of antiquity had not been repositories of learning, but prisons of dangerous information, with librarians serving as unwitting wardens. The tablet's water song was not random noise, but a form of echolocation, seeking its missing components across the archaeological record. The ethical implications paralyzed rational thought. The knowledge contained within Enki's codex could revolutionize human civilization, eliminating water scarcity and enabling sustainable development on a planetary scale. The hydrological techniques described in the tablet could transform arid regions into fertile paradises, support populations of unprecedented size, and provide the foundation for a truly post-scarcity society. Humanity stood on the threshold of solving one of its most fundamental challenges, limited only by fragments of ancient clay. Yet the very completeness of this solution suggested its danger. Perfect mastery over water would fundamentally alter the relationship between humanity and the natural world, transforming environmental stewardship into environmental domination. The power to control the hydrological cycle was the power to reshape continents, to determine which ecosystems thrived and which perished, to hold the survival of all terrestrial life within human hands. The knowledge promised not just abundance, but absolute responsibility for the consequences of that abundance. The ancient priests who had sealed Enki's codex had understood what modern science was only beginning to recognize: that certain forms of technological capability exceeded human wisdom. Their decision to fragment and hide the knowledge was not an act of ignorance, but of profound humility, a recognition that civilization might not survive its success. They had chosen deliberate limitation over unlimited power, accepting scarcity as the price of survival. As the water song reached its crescendo, Zinubara faced the same choice that had confronted the ancients. The tablet could be studied, its secrets extracted and applied to modern challenges. The scattered components could be gathered, the mathematical sequences completed, and Enki's gift finally claimed. Humanity could step forward into a new golden age of hydrological mastery, armed with divine knowledge and unlimited confidence. Or the tablet could remain sealed, its secrets preserved but contained. The ancient wisdom of limitation could be honored, the fragments kept scattered, and the water song allowed to fade back into silence. Civilization could continue its imperfect struggle with scarcity, accepting the inefficiencies and inequities of ignorance as preferable to the terrible responsibilities of knowledge. The water whispered its final offer, promising solutions to problems that had plagued humanity since the dawn of agriculture. In its song lay the blueprint for paradise, the mathematical poetry of perfect plenty. All that remained was the choice, to listen or to let the silence return.